If you're an LA Knight fan, then this is a video for you. I'm going to explain why he hasn't been pushed yet, when the actual jump-off point is going to start, and who is the one standing in his way preventing him from being pushed. But first I'm going to go back and explain what happened when Triple H first came in with the name change, original plans for WrestleMania, etc., to explain exactly what is happening with what has become one of the most popular wrestlers in WWE today. This video will start members only and then become a public video a couple of weeks later. Gives you a chance to see what we're doing in the members only section at the moment, breaking down individuals and stories, as well as false reports and rumour killing from other outlets. Peter Insider, by the way, going to be mentioned on this one, who did report that LA Knight was favoured to win Money in the Bank. So I'll start at the beginning when it comes to LA Knight's name change. When Triple H first came in, LA Knight was in a very different position to where he is now. Vince McMahon had LA Knight using the name Max Dupree, managing the Maximum Male models, who are essentially quietly being disbanded as we speak, with his sister, I think it was, Max Dupree, also being used in that way to replace Max Dupree with Max Dupree. Anyway, the change to the name of LA Knight was essentially one of Triple H's many ways of saying, look, fans, this is the guy. We're going to make sure he's looked after. We're going to do you a solid and help you out. That is not what happened. Under Triple H's first few months, a number of wrestlers came into the company or returned to the company, which gradually limited the airtime for a number of wrestlers. There were experimentations with Karrion Kross. Damage Control got a lot of TV time. The women's tag team titles were rebuilt. And in many ways, we saw the bloodline taking over more than ever before. And it did mean that even though LA Knight was told you'll get a name change and a brand new push, the push never really materialised. He did make brief appearances on TV, but it was usually in losing efforts, much the same as happened with Karrion Kross and Drew McIntyre. That created some limits, at least for the first 6 months of Triple H's premiership, because around January time, Triple H was told by Nick Khan the purse strings are now tied. There are limits to the budget, and we are going to have to limit you from some of the signings that you're making. This was a intentional step by Nick Khan to essentially say to Triple H, the amount of people that you're bringing in, not all of them are working out. You are going to have to stop eventually. This meant that Triple H, who had already brought in a number of different people, Zelina Vega's return we saw a little before that. We also saw discussions with AOP and the Iconics, as well as beyond Karrion Kross, Emma, for example, and a number of others. We saw so many names involved that Nick Khan cut those purse strings. This then created an opportunity for LA Knight, and he was used a little bit more on TV because acts like Hit Row didn't get over and faded pretty quickly into the background. This also was the moment at which fans really started to get behind LA Knight. Some of the things that were being attempted by Triple H were essentially just put LA Knight out there and see how it goes. It went well. It went really well, and fans really started to create a wave of momentum for LA Knight that meant that a lot of fans were speculating that LA Knight would make a pretty big appearance at WrestleMania. At this point, unfortunately, with Triple H liking to have smaller cards, there were no plans in place for LA Knight at WrestleMania. Triple H apparently tried to call an audible late on, but by that point, Vince McMahon was already directly involved in the booking for WrestleMania. He'd already made the changes that would see Brock Lesnar face Omos, and which would potentially have seen Bobby Lashley face Bray Wyatt, a choice which essentially saw the end of Bray Wyatt on our TV screens until relatively soon in coming. Triple H and Vince McMahon were not particularly in agreement when it came to WrestleMania. There were some managerial decisions that Vince McMahon made that Triple H was not particularly happy with, and in many ways vice versa. There's been a really active negotiation ever since, and in many ways LA Knight has been the one that most of this discussion has been about. Now, since WrestleMania, Triple H has been very aware that he wants to create opportunities for LA Knight. And one of the key ways to do that is just to have him out there in front of the fans so that the fans can cheer, boo, whatever they want to do. In the end, it was cheer, and in the end, it was good. So a lot of fans really behind LA Knight in general at the moment. Triple H wants to take that further. There are, in fact, a few problems preventing that, though, and those few problems all start with Vince and end with McMahon. There are attempts being made and negotiations ongoing that would see LA Knight in a much higher position. There was talk of LA Knight featuring in Money in the Bank, though I can confirm there was no talk of him actually winning it. PW Insider did report that there were people backstage in WWE pushing to have LA Knight win Money in the Bank. I'm not aware of that personally, and certainly that was never the plan to have LA Knight pick up that win. There was a lot of discussion as to potential people who could. But with Vince McMahon returning, his intention was to push Damian Priest, as I previously reported. That is exactly what happened. Damian Priest currently holding himself a briefcase because, after all, why not? LA Knight was never going to be the guy. He was intentionally being featured regularly, one, for that pop, and two, as a way for Triple H to prove to Vince McMahon, this is the guy, we should probably start pushing him. Those choices have now got Vince McMahon's attention, because if there's one thing Vince McMahon listens to, even above himself, it's money. And to put it bluntly right now, LA Knight is money. They were also reported there was a big LA Knight push coming in the build-up to SummerSlam. Again, completely false. I reported several weeks ago, by the time this goes public about a month ago, that there was no intention for LA Knight to feature particularly heavily or in a championship match at SummerSlam. There are plans to have him pushed, but the real push for LA Knight will start after SummerSlam, because at the moment, Triple H is in many ways still proving to Vince that this is a guy to take it with. In fact, so much so that Triple H actually kicked a match off of the SummerSlam card to get LA Knight onto it. I'm referring particularly to the United States Championship match, which would have seen Austin Theory take on Santos Escobar in one of the early matches at SummerSlam. That match has been moved to the SmackDown after SummerSlam in order to make space for a Battle Royal, which is set to feature LA Knight and to be the jumping off point for LA Knight's push. Essentially, the choice at least of the push, is that LA Knight will be taking the place of Austin Theory. Austin Theory's push will be stalled. He will be essentially stepping aside. Sheamus has also stepped aside and out of the way to make room for LA Knight, as Sheamus was due to be a lot more involved with Austin Theory in the United States Championship. Instead, they've stepped aside. Santos Escobar gets a one-off opportunity. LA Knight long-term slots into that role. So it will mean Austin Theory dropping down the pecking order a little. That tells me that Vince McMahon, who has been the man standing in the way of LA Knight, is now behind this happening. The cap at the moment for this push is United States Championship. I do suspect we're going to see LA Knight compete with and claim the championship from Austin Theory, carrying it into probably WrestleMania. I feel LA Knight will defend that championship at WrestleMania, maybe even in a rematch of Austin Theory, because it's difficult to say who else will be at that level. Maybe Grayson Waller. I could see Grayson Waller versus LA Knight at WrestleMania for the United States Championship. I could definitely see that. But there are more limitations incoming. There is a plan to turn LA Knight face, but they're essentially waiting for a big moment so they can say, hey, we know you already think this guy's a good guy, but here's him being a good guy. Hence the occasional suggestion that he's still heel, while they're actively having him squash people in Hit Row, such as Ashanti the Adonis. One more thing is currently stopping a stronger push for LA Knight, and that is the brand that he is on. He was kept on the SmackDown brand, and in many ways there are regrets for having let that happen. If he was over on Raw, LA Knight versus Gunther would already be actively in place, though I don't really fancy his chances of winning gold on that one. There'll be more on this in the days and weeks to come. Anytime I'll have new information, I'll be sure to share it with you. If you have watched this on the public section of YouTube, please do consider becoming a channel member. You'll get this news earlier, and at times, you'll get this news only there. We make sure all news is public and free here, but I do go into deep dives in the members only section, including covering my own reporting, where and when I learned what, so that you can learn the best you can about what information is available when, and my process for it. In the meantime, I do suggest all of you hit like, subscribe if you haven't, and I hope you've really enjoyed the show. If you're a fan of LA Knight, by all means leave a comment just saying yeah. In the meantime, see you soon. Cheers, guys.